Um, my name is Robert Taylor. I've been a Puna resident for 41 years. I live in the Lani Puna Garden subdivision adjacent to the geothermal site. My academic background is in biochemistry and biophysics, and I've got a fair amount of knowledge of how cells interact with contaminants and so forth. So a lot of this information has disturbed me. I'm going to kind of prioritize my testimony. I'm hoping that at least one or more of you will ask questions regarding some of what I'm going to say, which is an extension of a lot of the other testimony that was already given today. If you want to call it the 1 mile zone from the plant, we need an active alert system for nearby residents. Right now, they're just relying on phone calls from the plant to go to police dispatch, which goes to civil defense. Then there's a response by police, fire, hazmat. A siren won't do any good because people will just think it's a tsunami or something. We need an active response system right there so people can get up and leave, because those people are going to be severely injured or dead in the case of a blowout. Some kind of an audible alarm system so that it can be recognized as opposed to the alert system for the tsunamis. In addition, monitoring. Right now, the monitors that I've seen, which seem to be identical, the sensors are 8 to 12 feet off the ground, and I've been told that hydrogen sulfide and a lot of the heavy metal effluent in the air, it's actually heavier than air. So I don't know how the heck they're going to get any readings that are applicable to people in their beds or whatever at night, children especially playing outside, if these monitors are so far off the ground. We need an independent, comprehensive scientific monitoring system, and that's something that should be addressed. And lastly, Mr. Kaliakini said that when they have material coming out of the well that they put in the leach ponds, I guess from the drilling, and then they take the brine and put it back into the well, they still have what he calls chalk. It's not chalk, it's silica. That's one of the largest ingredients coming out of the well after the brine. And they even have to use caustic soda to clean the wells to make sure that they are actually still going to operate and not jam up and either blow out or seal off and have to drill again. So they're dumping this on their roads. What happens when it rains or if it's picked up by the wind? There's got to be some heavy metals mixed in with that. I don't know if any of you remember leaded glass that was finally taken off the market. Glass is a semi-liquid, and a lot of other metals and other things can be added to it. Just ask any glass blower that hasn't already died of cancer. So these are health issues that need to be addressed, and I'm hoping that you can get some answers from PGV and that we can possibly get an independent monitoring body to take care of these health issues, because these are the first things that need to be addressed, because it's all happening right now. This isn't something we want to wait to hear about next year or the year following. Please take heed to what we're saying today, because we voted for you and we expect and respect you for your efforts to protect and help the community. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you for your testimony. Hi, Barbara, why don't you help me pronounce your last name?
Cuttance.
Thank you. Hello.
Cuttance is pretty close. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to offer my testimony today. I feel appreciative of your time. It meets my need to be heard. I'm going to speak on COM 743, 743.1 and 764. I was eager to hear the PGV presentation this morning, but now feel disappointed by it because it did not meet my need for clarity and information. It seems to me that the motivation from PVC to make this presentation this morning to the Hawaii County Council was to protest about the 1 mile buffer zone, because being put in place indicates that their presence adjacent to a community is dangerous. They stated that they were implicated. That's so true. They are implicated in the health problems being suffered by my friends and neighbours in Leilani and further afield. I was disturbed to hear that a letter from PGV was sent to residents within the 1 mile buffer zone just prior to the last meeting, when the council was hearing testimony from residents on bills 256 and 267. The letter employed scare tactics and said that if the bills were passed, their property prices would drop. This was designed to garner some support from the local community. Let me tell you now that the word about people's health in the area is not just within the 1 mile buffer zone, is out. Property prices have dropped. Truth will out. People are suffering and they're talking to each other about it. It had nothing to do with the buffer zone. I feel disturbed about the existence of this letter because it doesn't meet my need for community or honesty. In Paul Thompson's presentation, he said that PGV have always re-injected 100% of the brine under normal operation. He also said that H2S is very corrosive. I'd like to know if there's ever been non-normal operations at PGV since 2004, and if so, was the public informed? There was some information in the presentation about testing water, but no data about that testing. What has been proved by the testing? What is being tested for? Who is testing? Where are the samples taken from? Which wells and catchments? How often and why do they test? Why is the testing taking place? I want the water in the warm ponds being tested for toxins from the brine that's being re-injected. I'm afraid that little children and adults I see swimming there now, I'm afraid for them. I used to swim in the warm ponds, but I don't now, and I won't until I find out what's happening to the water there. Has there been contamination caused by geothermal generation activities of a well at Green Lake at any time? Why did PGV pay for the new water source from beach lots and vacation lands? If so, why, and when was this? In all, the PGV presentation was light on actual data and heavy on PR spin. I'm very disappointed by the Department of Health's no-show at this meeting today to answer the questions put by Jay Yoshimoto. I was also disappointed that they were not compelled to be here today. I would like to know the answers to those questions and many more that we have, I believe, is being tabled today as written testimony by the Paley Defence Fund. I'm hopeful that the Council will put those questions to PVG and the Department of Health and wonder when and how we can expect the answers to those questions. I'd like to be present when those questions are answered and have the right to ask more if this is possible. I would like to know whether the DOH gave the people of Leilani blood tests when they wrote a health report back in the 1980s, or did they just write people off who said that they were sick as rapidly anti-geothermal? Right now, the sound of the drilling is causing long-term sleep deprivation to residents within a 2 mile radius. What will the DOH and the Council do now to stop this? I know that long-term effects of sleep deprivation cause many health problems. I was also eager to hear the presentation of IDG today. Much of what Ms. Trask said about cultural aspects of what IDG are about really resonated with me. However, I feel disappointed they've aligned themselves with geothermal when it seems clear to me that solar is a much safer way to generate power. I live off-grid and I'm moving towards total sustainability. I know that solar works and could work for the whole of Hawaii if it was the will of the government. This is a very sunny state. The money that could be put towards the cable would go a long way towards establishing the much more sustainable alternatives of solar and wind. I live in Papaya Farms Road and call on the Hawaii County Council to explore and research solar power for the Big Island, and if found to be a cost-effective, safe, viable alternative to make the Big Island self-sustaining in energy in the near future, support and promote this instead of geothermal energy. Is it true that PGV have leased land owned by the Lyman Trust between the mailboxes for our community and Four Corners, and have plans to apply for permits to drill more wells on this land? This will be within 1 mile of where I live. I support home rule and for the call to decommission PGV now. The council has the power to stop renewing PGV's permits. Please hear the people who have voted you into this position you hold. We do not want geothermal in our backyards. Though I'm not able to vote since I'm not yet a citizen, I can and am encouraging the vast unenrolled voters who reside in Puna to enrol and vote at the election for the first time on August 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next to testify is Robert Christie, followed by Tina Floyd. We have 11 more testimonies signed up.
Good morning, Council, and I'm going to be testifying for Puna Alliance, and then afterwards I'm going to give some testimony for myself if I run out of time. So first I want to say that I really want to commend the community. The community has been turning out for months in numbers that I've never seen before at this council, and I have to say that you have to recognize they're doing a lot of research and they understand this issue. So it's pretty clear that they're interested in this and that they understand the risks and why we're failing. I believe that Puna is probably one of the most sustainable communities in the whole state. You know, we're on solar, we're organic, we grow our food. You know, I have a 10-acre farm, and so you know we're living the style that the state and the county aspire to. We talk about being green, being solar. And these people that come here and testify before you, a lot of them are doing that right now. So we understand this pretty well. I wanted to ask Jay, in your letter to the Department of Health, it says that you wanted answers to those questions by June 29th. And did they answer the questions?
I'll provide it. I don't want to discuss
Okay, all right.
but I will provide the response once we finish the testimony.
So I submitted testimony to you guys. I'm going to read some of it into the record for the Department of Health. It says, aloha Chairman Yagong, council members, and DOH representatives. I have to say I'm very disappointed that the Department of Health did not come. It's been over 20 years, around 20 years, and they've never really come and talked to us. Yet they make statements all the time about that there's no impacts out there. And I really have to wonder how they know that if they don't come out and talk to us. And I would like to find out if you can't get them here to talk to us, how are we ever going to get the Department of Health to come out and talk to us? They permit this project. I'll just read the testimony here. Pele Defense Fund, Puna Alliance, Occupy Hilo, and Malawana request the Hawaii County Council, through its chairman, Dominic Egon, initiate and facilitate a dialogue with the State Department of Health on behalf of the people in Lower Puna. Serious health, safety, and nuisance concerns have been raised with this council by hundreds of Puna residents over the last few months. We believe the issues raised are long-standing, serious, and of a nature that requires a response from the State Department of Health. We believe the Department of Health has an obligation to the affected community beyond its general responsibilities to public health. When the Department of Health granted permits allowing the PGV power plant to be placed in a pre-existing residential community with no buffer zones or setbacks, they assumed an obligation to be responsive to concerns or impacts that permit creates for the families that live near the plant. The Hawaii County Council has brought forth legislation in response to the issues raised by the residents to facilitate health studies, community monitors, a notification system, and to establish a buffer zone around the power plant. With its resources and responsibilities as a permitting authority and its role as a general guardian of the public health and safety, the State Department of Health should be working with not only PGV, but with the Hawaii County Council and the residents they are charged with protecting. Unfortunately, today that is not happening, and this testimony is an attempt to remedy that. And again, I have to say, they have a representative here on the island. How hard is it for him to come here and address the issues that have been raised here for 20 years? Why? Where is the State Department of Health? They're promoting these projects, but they don't come here. The Department of Health records document the surrounding community's concern and complaints of impacts dating back to the first operations of the state's HGPA experimental power plant. So we ask the council to request that the DOH meet its responsibility to the residents of Puna by openly answering the questions attached to this testimony. We believe that obtaining answers to these questions may help elaborate on the well-known historic and current ongoing concerns of the families living in the subdivisions adjacent to the PVG power plant. So, let's see.
Mr. Tracy, actually, can I interrupt you?
Yes.
Okay. Staff just tells me that the communication, there's a communication from Mr. Gill, this is for the public's benefit, will be available to members of the public shortly at the table in the back. You can look at their responses. They did provide a written response late Friday afternoon, like 6:47 p.m. And so that didn't make, of course, our agenda because of the time constraints. So if you want to reserve time to go look at the responses and come back to the table, I'll allow you that opportunity if you want.
Okay, on the health department, I will. Can I speak to PGV
Yeah,
now? Or
go
should,
ahead.
okay. So as far as PGV, I would like to know how many upset conditions have occurred at PGV over the last 10 years. We know that's when they have fugitive emissions. We haven't seen that. We know that in 2004 they had a pentane fire there. I don't know if you know that. I just became aware of that. It was a large fire, 3,000 gallons of pentane, I believe, that burned up a complete generator. So, you know, they have 30,000 gallons of pentane at this power plant that run these 10 turbines, 3,000 for each turbine. They have a 12,000 gallons, approximately another 12,000 gallons as backup. And there was a leak and the pentane ignited. So if we have an earthquake or any other kind of thing that's going to cause a leak or a large leak or multiple leaks, plant could explode. And then what's going to happen? On top of the explosion of the pentane, are we going to have the H2S leaking because there's nobody there or they're unable to deal with that problem? I think that's a real issue, and to say that we don't need a buffer zone, for PGV to say that they're concerned about this mild buffer zone is when they know that they have this problem, this potential problem, is crazy. It shows a lack of concern for the community, and it shows I don't even know how to describe it. It's mind-boggling to me that they can put all of us at risk, all these people at risk, and just not care. So also, I'd like to find out if PGV, interfered with the Gator Health Study. Did Jack Dean, Vice President and General Manager of PGV, on March 26, 1997, or at any time, write or contact William Cunningham, Chancellor of the University of Texas System in Austin, or any other university official in the state? And if so, why? Did Jack Dean, Vice President and General Manager of PGV, write Cunningham, Chancellor of the University, and tell him that PGV is surprised and disappointed that the University of Texas would knowingly allow its fine name to be attached to a house survey of the type produced by Dr. Legator? And basically, the only people that ever came here to try and help us was Dr. Legator, and that would listen to us. Department of Health. Department of Health called us rabidly anti-geothermal, so we couldn't be surveyed. They didn't do blood tests. I mean, how does being rabidly anti-geothermal affect a blood test? They haven't ever done any of this stuff. 25 years, 30 years, and then, and on IDG, just for a second, IDG gets up here and they talk about Don Thomas. Well, I know Dr. Don Thomas. Dr. Don Thomas was the geochemist that did the HGPA plant. He came to my house when I was sick as a dog and told me it wasn't geothermal. And these are the experts at IGG now comes up here and tells us that, oh yeah, we're going to protect the community and we got better experts and all. I'll tell you, Don Thomas been there from day one. Don Thomas made a lot of money on this thing, and I know Don Thomas. I've talked with him many times, and if that's their kind of experts, then I don't trust them at all. So also, what's his name? Paul Thompson wrote a letter in March to the Leilani Community Association that stated that, if this is true, I didn't see this letter, but this is what I was told, so maybe he can answer the question. Did he write a letter to the Leilani Community Association that stated the water does not meet the EPA standards? So exactly what water is he referring to? What water testing is Mr. Thompson talking about? Who did the test Mr. Thompson's referring to? And, so why is even Paul Thompson here in Hawaii? I mean, this guy's from the mainland. He's a PR guy. I mean, what's he doing here? and, you know, and writing letters and stuff. When we're trying to get monitoring, they're trying to shut down Bill 256. You know, after all this time, we're finally looking at funding studies, health studies, and monitoring, and like the doctor talked about earlier, or these other people, notification systems. And PGV is fighting us all the way on that. I don't get it. You know, if they're not hiding something, if there's not a problem, why aren't they helping us? Why are they working against us on all of this stuff? You know, so on this, you know, also we want to look at baseline studies for the water in this reinjection. And again, you know, has there ever been any, you know, contamination found? You know, where do they file their reports? There's just so many questions, and I just don't know how to get this answer. They were told, do you guys know how much they inject, how much to re-inject? They reject 3,000 gallons. This is what I was told the other day, 3,000 gallons a minute. And that's what Mike told me when we did the tourism plan. 3,000, that's 50 gallons a second. I can't even comprehend what that is. And so, and all these wells in the mainland now are leaking. They're finding that they don't work, that the stuff isn't contained. So, you know, I think that we need to look at that. That's a huge amount. Day in and day out for 20 years, 3,000 gallons a minute being reinjected in underneath our water table. And, you know, I think we need to take a really hard look. This council needs to take a really hard look at the water information. And we got to look at that well at Green Lake. I've heard about that same stuff. I don't know if it's true, but what we're hearing is that there was a county well down there. They found contamination, and the well was closed down, and PGV paid for a new water system for that community down there. So I'd like to find out about that. Also, we know that the HGPA used to just to pond this stuff on the ground, and unlined ponds. How could it not have contaminated the water? You know, I mean, you can't put, they had football field size ponds of this stuff that they know is toxic. So also, you know, hazardous waste now, does PGV have a heavy metal problem? I asked them that the other day, and they said yes, they have a heavy metal problem. And basically, they produce, I want to know what other hazardous waste they produce. And, you know, do they ship it off-site, and how do they do that? So what and there's one thing that really got me when this tour was they have a scrubber.
You summarize.
Okay, I'll just finish with this one thing because this is amazing to me. They have a scrubber, and I think it's a non-condensable scrubber, where they have a material in there that scrubs the whatever fugitive emissions or whatever they're running through that for whatever reason, and it's some kind of a material. Ask them what they did with it, and first they said they use it for fertilizer on the plants around the plant. And then later they said it's a great weed killer. So I think there's a lot of questions like, what is this material? That that, you know, is it hazardous? And I mean, are they really just dumping it on the ground? And, you know, it could go on and on. I think I could go on for another hour, you know. So thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Okay. So, next testifier is Puna Geothermal, which should be followed by Carrie Marks.
Aloha, and thank you for having us once again and listening to us over and over. I'm hoping not everybody's got the same kind of information overload that I have. And I would like to testify about 743, a little bit into point 1 and 764. I won't take very long. You've heard much about the dangers of blowouts, accidental releases, and explosions, and the dangers including sudden death possible by exposure to hydrogen sulfide released in such an event. It has happened here. We know it's not an everyday thing. However, it's important to understand that chronic low-level exposure to hydrogen sulfide can cause long-term permanent damage to the central nervous system, including possible genetic changes. In the past, exposure to low concentrations of hydrogen sulfide was simply considered a nuisance and was subsequently removed from the Clean Air Act under pressure by the American Petroleum Institute. It is now being added back in as of this year because the EPA has finally found that they cannot deny the dangers of it. So this was in direct opposition to the recommendation of the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, which set a chronic reference dose of 0.1 per parts per million. in the draft on the toxicological profile for hydrogen sulfide. So this extremely tiny amount, they're saying that over a long term, if you are exposed chronically, you will have, you're likely to have some permanent damage. This amount is not very much. We're all exposed to small amounts from various sources here and there occasionally. However, chronic low-level exposure over a long time shows elevated scores for the following symptoms: depression, hopelessness, suicide, decreased white blood cell count, elevated red blood cell count, hematocrit, hemoglobin, and platelets, permanent neuropsychological and neurophysiological deficits such as balance, memory, word recall, and the like. Between the ages of 13 and 20 years old, between 1980 and 1987, I got to live in the wonderful city of Tacoma, Washington, which is famous for the aroma of Tacoma. I lived near a pulp mill plant. It was that time in my life that I started to, and every day we breathed it. We had the rotten egg smell. That was before the scrubbers, and it was really bad. So that was when my symptoms started. I stopped sleeping decades ago. Insomnia, neuropsychological symptoms, disordered sensory and central nervous system, hormonal and reproductive anomalies, hearing loss, and severe tinnitus. Over the years, I eventually became so disabled with these symptoms that 5.5 years ago, I left my beloved Cascadia, the Great Pacific Northwest, and came to Hawaii Island, the healing island, to regain my health. When I lived in the arid climate of Ka'u, I started to feel better here in Hawaii. Hawaii has certainly helped me to regain a quality of life that seemed forever gone. My longest and most disabling symptoms remain, however, and since I moved to Puna a 1.5 years ago, several have become exacerbated. For the first time in my life, I get to deal with chronic skin rashes and lesions. And I got a name for it, Puna bumps. When the community mobilized around geothermal energy months ago, I was severely ignorant of the risks and unavoidable environmental and cultural damage that seems to be viewed as the cost of doing business by the industry. The more I've learned, the more upset I am that this monster has been operating fairly carte blanche relative to the community's needs for decades. Our children, our mothers, our fathers, and our kupuna deserve better. Please shut it down. Now I'd like to speak just a little bit about the presentation I heard from IDG today. Slick as it was, it left a bad taste in my mouth, and I hope you'll consider these reasons why. IDG did an excellent job enumerating and expanding the many reasons the Ormat PGV model has been an ongoing disaster for our community. What else left a bad taste is that despite this second presentation to the council, I heard zero proposals or information about the fabulous, new, safe, green technology IDG keeps promising. In the presentation, IDG condemns Ormat without a single reference to how they would do anything differently to keep the community in Tutupele safe and clean. Only vague references to non-Ormat technology. Please show us the goods, Ms. Trask. Why is this? Maybe it's because they really aren't interested in the community's concerns. They speak of the nasty effects of geothermal as if it's a thing of the past, without suggesting how IDG would avoid and or mitigate the toxic dangers of geothermal. Not only that, but once they concluded the presentation, they simply sashayed out, refusing to talk to any of us geothermal resistors, even calling for a police escort at the lunch break. What are they so afraid of? Why haven't they initiated a dialogue with the community that will be directly affected to even give the appearance of addressing our issues around health, environmental degradation, noise, and the spiritual life of their own Hawaiian ohana? Somehow, even though claiming to once be anti-geothermal based on religious freedom, by divvying up the profits and keeping some in the community, the spiritual health of Pele practitioners now seems to mean zero to IDG. Native land, still foreign desires. IDG knows that it cannot profit from a statewide solar retrofit, which tells me that encased deep below the flowery language of returning profits to the local people, IDG is primarily about turning a profit for themselves. And who funds them? It may be a local company, but I'll lay odds its investors are not. County Council, thank you for listening to us over and over again. And I want to ask you to please recognize a Trojan horse for what it is and do not be fooled. Let your legacy be one of truly representing the highest good of the INA and the people. We're not going away, but as illustrated by abandoned energy projects everywhere, neither does the permanent damage caused by reckless, mismanaged, profit-driven ventures. If you as a council are truly serious about the idea of home rule and true cultural and environmental sustainability, please take a much harder look at our true options. And as for PGV, please shut it down.
Next to the testimony, next is Terry Marks, followed by Corey Harding.
Hello.
Hello.
Aloha. Good afternoon, Council. I'm Carrie. PGV first. I can probably relate a lot to the people that really had no opinion on geothermal before a while ago. In fact, I was just thinking over the weekend that about 2 years ago, I took my kids to the Onikuza Science Day. Oh, thank you. Down at the university, and we were going around to the different booths, and one of the displays had a car there, and it was the PGV display. They had an electric car that they were showing that they could use with their geothermal power, and so I went over to talk to them because I thought it was cool. They drove a car up here and asked them about it, and they said, oh no, they didn't drive it up here. It doesn't have a range like that. They put it on a flatbed truck and brought it up here, but that they do use it to drive around the plant. Oh, okay. So how's it going down there at the plant, I asked, and they're like, oh, it's going good. I said, are you planning any more plants or anything? Are you expanding? How's geothermal? It's awesome, right? And they were like, oh yeah, we're going through some community stuff right now. And I said, oh, how's that going? And they said, eh. And that's all I remember about that conversation. And I don't even know why I knew it was but I did. So then, this past fall, we started looking at energy issues and then got pretty hardcore into it over the winter and decided that Helco is definitely evil and we definitely don't like them, and we're definitely taking a very, very focused look at Helco. And then we decided, well, we can't just be against everything. We have to be for some things. So what are we going to be for? How about solar? Well, yeah, that went over great. And then I said, okay, well, how about geothermal? And Bob said, no, it's not clean, it's not cheap, and it's not renewable. And that was the end of that conversation. So I've done some research since then, and a lot of other people have too, it seems, and that seems to be bearing out. It's not cheap. Ask anybody. Ask your mayor's energy advisory commission if it's cheap. It's in their minutes that it's not. It's not clean. They pump this stuff into the ground. They have no emissions because they bury them in the ground. And as many people have testified, it's coming out now. It's coming out now. It's coming out in the press, and it's coming out of the ground. They're not containing these contaminants at all. Closed loop. Bleh. So dump geothermal, dump PGV, dump them, 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 dump them. How close am I to 3 minutes? Dump them. I mean, honestly, we wouldn't be... I don't live down there. I've never lived down there. I've lived here for 11 years. I lived in Wainaku first, and now I live up the hill, and I don't live down there, but I've spent an inordinate amount of time looking into this. It's crazy. It's making my family crazy, but my friends are sick, and I'm trying to help figure out why. It seems like there's a reason for it, and I don't know that it's geothermal. I am not saying that it is, but they're definitely sick. There's some stuff going on down there. So, in relation to the Department of Health, switching now to that one, I am severely disappointed that they're not here today. I testified last time or two ago that I was here that they wrote a letter to Jay Yoshimoto, probably because you're the chairman of this committee and that would be the appropriate person to send it to, asking for an audience. It was never followed up on. You never did that. On Monday, you sent them a letter asking them if maybe they could come. I know it's short notice and all. I'll give you that out. But, you know, the next day, let's send some questions that maybe they can answer, which I would love to see the answers to if they're available. So I also told you that we're going to start our own health survey, and we've done that. And to all the people, too, that testify that there's no health surveys done, nobody has ever studied that, that's crap. Look it up. I mean, anybody can Google H2S study and find hits and hits and hits and hits. There's a lot of them out there. And what's different now, as opposed to when these were done before, is that now we have a long-term situation. Before, it seems like they were focusing mostly on these events, these big events that happen. But since then, in the 12 years or so that since they've been here, geothermal is not the only industry that produces H2S. Lots of industries do. The oil and refining industry does, paper mills, those kinds of stuff. And there have been epidemiological studies done on those populations. They, without a doubt, all find pretty much the same thing. And the thing they find is neuropsychological abnormalities. That's what they find. Okay, the Kilburn and Warsaw, 1995. Residents downwind of a high sulfur crude refinery, exposed blah, 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 for 10 to 15 years, exhibited a variety of neuropsychological abnormalities. Then it also says low dose community exposure indicated more serious impairment than worker exposure. So I'm tired of hearing my neighbors and my friends compared to the workers that are there for 8 or 12-hour shifts or whatever they do and go home for the weekend. It's different when you live there. Prolonged downwind exposure to residents' chronically impaired balance, choice reaction time, trail making, and increased fingertip number writing errors. These are all neuropsych tests. Okay, they failed them all. There's no doubt that H2S has this effect. So we started a study. And let me tell you about these women that showed up to do this study. They're not rabidly anti-geothermal. They're scared for their lives. These women are healthy. These women follow special diets. They exercise. They work, all of them. Only 3 claim to be unemployed. None of them claim to be disabled. They think they're healthy. When they rated their own health, all of them, but 3 rated them as good or excellent. But I can't figure out why this is happening to me. Their education level was high. 8 of them had some college. 5 had bachelor's degrees. 4 had graduate degrees, and 4 had professional degrees out of 21. They're all very educated. They're health conscious. They take care of their bodies. They pay attention to what they put into their bodies. They pay attention to what they eat, and they exercise. We don't spend hours and days Googling H2S so that we can come down here and ruin your day. There is something going on here, and we need to look into that. The other thing that I found, well, the thing that I found in the study, in the data that I've gone through so far, correlates.
Want to let you know you're in your last 3 minutes.
I'm on my last 3 minutes. Okay, I'll summarize for you. It correlates with the studies that were found before. I found a high degree of neuropsychological problems, which we've not tested for, and I think I'm probably going to do that. I know how to do that. I have a degree in gerontology and communications. I've worked in the medicine or social work field my whole life. I will do those studies with them. But I'm concerned about their mood. Depression was reported by 8 of them, anxiety by 8, mood affect disorders by 5, suicidal ideation by 3. 3 of 21 women admitted to suicidal ideation. These are not psychosomatic hypochondriac people. This is real stuff that's going on. Memory loss, 9. None of them. I'm a gerontologist. None of these people are of the age to have this kind of data. None of them. Okay, anyway, enough about that. We need more studies. We need a better study. We need a real study. We need an epidemiological study. We need the Department of Health to show face. And we need somebody else besides the Department of Health to do that study. Okay, quickly, since I sort of used my IDG time a little bit, I'll go real quick because I can't remember what they said either. I'm kind of shocked at how many people have gotten up here and said, I don't know what they said. I don't know what they said either. I sat over lunch and asked everyone, what did they say? What are we supposed to say? They said nothing. They said a blah, 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 culture to culture. They don't have a geothermal plant. They don't have a plan. If they had one, they would tell us what it is. In the past, I've also testified that there are cultural, we have to take into account the cultural aspects of this. And it gets, played out in the paper and in editorials that all these white people come up and talk about Tutu Pele and that we should shut the hell up and not say anything about it. Well, I disagree. I disagree. Nobody ever accused the Lorax of not being a truffula tree, so why do I have to be a paleo practitioner to appreciate and, say that out loud? So please don't rip me apart in the editorials this week. But do it quick because there's not going to be a Hawaii Tribune Herald next month, you know that. Gosh, I lost my ending. I'm sorry. I'm probably out of time though anyway, right? Aloha.
Thank you, Ms. Marks. The next testifier is Corey Hardin. She will be followed
Don't
by
it.
Raul
Damn, that was my
Fujioka.
ending.
Mr. Fujiyoshi, come to the table. Ms. Harden, good afternoon. Aloha.
Good afternoon. I'll be speaking about the Department of Health letter. I want to thank the council for being here for hours and hours, and the community for being here for hours and hours. But where is Department of Health? I've heard good things about Gary Gill, who responded to Jay's letter, and I hope that the council can work with him and insist that the Department of Health come before the county council and answer all the stuff you've heard today. And I've also got some questions after reading their June 29 response to your letter, Jay. First, the letter on number 1C, noise, there's a limit of 70 decibels at the property line. And when they're drilling, I wonder if they go over that. Sounds like they do. Number 2 in the letter, they say PGV generates hazardous waste. I'd like details on that. Number 3 in the letter, they talk about hydrogen sulfide. Would they please come and explain to us why those monitors are 6 feet up or 8 feet up or whatever it is when the hydrogen sulfide goes down on the ground? When I've asked the PGV people, they say, well, we're following the regulations, but they don't seem to be able to explain why there are those regulations. I'd like to hear an explanation. Also, the hydrogen sulfide limit, says the letter, is 25 parts per billion hourly average. Now, could you get a spike that would be high enough to harm people, especially children or people in poor health, and still be under that average limit? Maybe a big spike that lasts for a couple seconds, which I guess is enough to kill you, and then it goes down, you're still under the average. In the letter number 7, it says 6 hydrogen sulfide violations in the last 20 years. I'd like to get details on that. There's been warning letters about hazardous waste. I'd like the details. Also, the PGV presentation, they said no emissions. However, John Olson was saying they do lose pentane. I heard some explanation of that. I'd like to hear how much, the effects on the residents. Let's see, and PGV said if they go offline, they can do controlled venting. Well, I would definitely like to know more details about that, how often that happens, how much venting, and the effects. So, thank you, Council, for being here for so long.
Thank you, Ms. Harden. Next is Raul Fujiyoshi. He'll be followed by Puna I'm sorry, Mr. Okay, if you can please come to the table. Mr. Fujiyoshi, good afternoon, aloha, you're next.
Good afternoon, council members. I want to first thank Chair Yoshimoto and other council members for setting this up. I think the testimonies, presentations, and the testimonies have helped to sharpen the issues, and I think it's been very helpful. I was one of those who was arrested in, I think, was in 1989 in Waukeele, Puna, and the two main reasons that I was arrested was for religious spiritual beliefs, and secondly about clean, is it clean? And I'm still haven't been convinced that those two reasons have been answered. In other words, is geothermal development an affront to Hawaiian religious spiritual beliefs? Yeah, I think that's my, and I don't hear even IDG responding to that. Okay, and secondly, does geothermal have negative impacts on health? That's my question, right? Now, I saw in both presentations, they talking about, I saw this words like, IDG said clean, safe, sustainable. And I questioned that, you know? What is clean, you know? And what is safe and what is sustainable? And then in the PGV said renewable and sustainable. And I questioned that. So I wish that you, when you question them, that you will raise these questions with them, because I'm not convinced. And I think you who've listened to so much testimony are sharp enough to understand whether they're really dealing with a real issue. Now, on the PGV presentation, I didn't come here right at the beginning, but they had in their presentation something about respected kupuna. I saw that on the thing. I want to know who these kupuna are, and are the kupuna cultural practitioners? You know, if you're not cultural practitioners and you're older people, it doesn't make much difference if they put you down respected kupuna. So are these kupuna actually cultural practitioners, and who are they? Yeah? And then explain this renewable and sustainable. And then the third big thing I thought is, and I think you picked up on it, is the way they ended off playing off the wider community in Puna against those who are the health concerns of those living in the immediate neighborhood. Yeah, and they use that big sign about the no with the red. I think it makes you wonder whether Mr. Thompson drafted and passed out that form letter that was used in the testimony in previously in the Bill 256, because it seems part of this kind of scheme in playing off the wider Puna community with the immediate neighbor, the health of the immediate, and I think that's a clear issue for me. On the, I was hoping that the Department of Health would be here, and I guess was more hope than a reality. But I think the very first demonstration that I was ever in, and you remember the first demonstration, it was an anti-Vietnam War demonstration. We marched from University of Hawaii all the way to Ala Moana Park. And the speaker at that time was Tom Gill. And I was so impressed with Tom Gill. I don't know if that was prior to him being lieutenant governor or what. And so I was so impressed with him, I followed the careers of his sons. And here, one of his sons is now the head honcho of Department of Health. Yeah? And I'm very disappointed in what Department of Health has been doing in response to the health issues in the community. It seems like the Department of Health, which should be representing the citizens of Hawaii about health issues, is not caring for us on the Big Island. And so it just adds to the feeling that you people are going in the right direction of home rule, because you're taking responsibility in standing up for the health concern the people on this island and the Department of Health and other state agencies are more after money for the state budget rather than what they really should be doing. So that really bothers me. Now, I know I'm not an expert about health concerns, but I think I know something about religion. I graduated with a degree at the Chicago Theological Seminary in Chicago in 1969, and I spent 20 years in Asia as a missionary, mainly in countries where other religions were dominant. And I studied for 6 months on the sacred texts of Buddhism because I wanted to understand which Buddhist texts do the Buddhist activists go to when they justify their getting involved in social issues and social concerns. So I spent time 20 years in Asia. And so, you know, when I see the IDG presentation, they use the word protection of cultural sites. You know, this trend to focus on site-specific language is a Western concept of religion. You know, indigenous, Asian, harmony type religions don't talk mainly about site-specific. They're talking about harmony of everything. Everything is sacred. And so that for them to sidestep by using a kind of site-specific type language
Hold on one
to
second.
talk.
Sorry. Stop this time. Someone turn off the cell phone. Sorry, Mr. Fujioshi, I just didn't want you to compete with the cell phone right now.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
we'll give you additional time. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, so anyway, I think if you have time to question the IDG group, I think you should question them much more seriously about what they mean about really respect for Hawaiian spiritual religious language, you know, culture, beliefs. You know, I'm not convinced by listening to them and they're downing the Pele Defense Fund that they really do respect them. I told you the last time I testified, we took the Pele Defense Fund to the Interfaith Alliance Hawaii and heard the presentation, and they unanimously said we're going to come up with a statement from the Interfaith Alliance Hawaii to respect the rights of Hawaiians for their religious and spirituality. And I think if other groups, you know, which are more concerned about harmony in their religion and not those who try to mix religion with the search for profit, I think begin to focus on those things, they will see the importance of respecting other religions, especially the religion in this host country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fujioshi. Mr. Han, sorry for getting your name wrong.
Quite all right. If you can't pronounce it, you would be the first or the last. Aloha mai nā kākou. My name is Puna Geothermal. Like Uncle Sam, I'm also here with the lawful reinstated government of the Kingdom of Hawaii. I wanted to make a minor correction on my testimony slip. I will actually be testifying on number 743 and rather than number 743.1. Now, that said, I'm sincerely hoping that every single one of you council members has gotten the 1 point from all the testimony over the last few months. Now, I come here unofficially on behalf of the common people who live in Puna who have no idea really what's going on, how they're being affected, maybe somewhat officially on behalf of the Hawaiian people, all of them who are at work and can't be here to speak for themselves, just like the rest of us. We're speaking for our entire community. On some level, some of us are speaking for our entire island, maybe all of Hawaii. Now, that said, I come here to testify on the matter of common sense. Now, let's just think about this. I know that hydrogen sulfide has been mentioned. What about arsenic, boron, carbon monoxide? Now, let's see here. Now let's think about this. Kuokala, the public charter school over in Kapoho, not too far away from geothermal. Pahoa High, Pahoa Intermediate, Pahoa Elementary, the Kamehameha Preschool right next door. over in Nana Valley, I believe there might be a Head Start that might be starting up. I'm not entirely sure about that. Or for that matter, Pohoiki Beach and all the people who come from all over the island. There's a playground right there. Now, I bring my children there. You know, I'm sure, I don't know if all of you have children, but that said, that's a mutual concern amongst all of us. Now, something that I'd like to bring up on a personal note. Now, I've only lived in Puna for less than 2 years. Just recently, as a matter of fact, in the last couple weeks, my wife, who's only 24 years old, they found a mass in her ovaries roughly the size of a golf ball. 24 years old. Now, when it comes to ovarian cancer, if it even is cancer, we don't know that yet. I'm not even in a position to directly draw a correlation between PGV and whatever's growing in my wife's ovaries. However, when I first found out about it, PGV is the first thing that popped in my mind. Now, at 24 years old, that's half of when you could expect a woman to have any kind of ovarian issue normally. Now, I will try to be brief because I know you guys have to do a lot of listening today. I'd like to also touch on the fact that so long as the Puna Geothermal Venture exists, a blowout is a risk that will never go away. It's a deep water horizon on land. Now, one of the last, I'll close up now. First off, I'd like to call attention to the county seal over there. It says Ola na moku. That's life from the lands, the islands, however you want to translate it. What's coming out of PGV, that's death. Now, the last thing I'm going to say, what I'm going to close with, and I'd like to touch really briefly on the cultural practice and the cultural matters and the religious. You know, my cultural belief that when it comes to Pele, if we fail and you guys fail, Pele may just take care of it herself. Thank you.
Next,